All right, we are live for another Wise Talk. Excited to be back this weekend. So I have Trader Steph, Mr. Alan Myers joining us, and going to hang out for a couple minutes and go back over activities from this past week, share our thoughts, and take some questions. So Alan Myers, Trader Steph, how you guys doing this afternoon?
Another day in paradise.
Same here.
Yes, it is. I wrote a
Can I add something to what Steph just said?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, that statement is it's got so much history.
It's on my license plate. Hey.
Yeah, I know, but I would just update it because everybody's into updating, and it's live free, or make them die.
Okay, I'll go with that.
Okay, just wanted to throw that in there.
All right, so where do you guys want to kind of tip off with today? I was thinking about whether we can touch about the reemergence of the public's attempt to put forth the idea that cases are ramping up, even though they never really went away, but not quite sure how to read into that. So we want to lead off with that first on this the spike of 21 states that are reopening first type of thing, or what? What do you guys think?
I got a problem because I'll just ramble on because I got so much. I've been following this intensely. I'm doing a big interview tomorrow. I got all kinds of information. I'm trying to put it together nice and succinct. Yeah. So maybe, Alan, what you want to talk about, and then I'll chime in later.
I've got whether you call it worldometer or worldometer.
Yeah, that's the one. That's the best one.
They give the stats, and when I first started keeping track of these numbers, I would go to the Johns Hopkins Coronavirus Resource Center. Then I found this worldometer, and it's, excuse me a second, had a cough. And they're very similar. So I go with the world odometer because it's easier to pull the numbers. Mm-hmm. Here's the numbers. According to about an hour ago, worldwide, I'm going to round off, 7,810,000 cases worldwide. Mm-hmm. Let's say 60% of those cases are in 10 countries. It's not as uniformly widespread.
Yeah.
But when you go into the cases, the 7,810,000 cases, 3,373,000 are considered active, and they are divided between mild and serious.
I got serious the screenshot there for you if you want to show what he's saying.
Yeah, there it is. Serious is 1.6% of all the, let's say, active cases. Mm-hmm. You get 3,319,000 mild cases. You have 53,000 serious cases. 1.6%. This is not the craziness. Mm-hmm. Then you got the closed cases that it's 4.4 million. 90% are recovered, 9.6 are dead. God rest their souls. But as we know, especially in the US, the dead numbers are too high. But still, that gives you an idea of what the numbers are. Then we go to, again, I don't make light of the illness. I don't make light of the deaths. You go to, I start tracking this on December 1, give or take. Mm-hmm. So we've been at it 197 days. If you take the total deaths, divide it by the number of days, we're at 2,183 dead a day worldwide. Now, if that's in your little community, that's a lot of dead people. When you're talking about a world of 7.8 billion, it's a fraction of a fraction. But the problem with these numbers that I have is if we don't bring context to the numbers, then they can be misconstrued, misunderstood, manipulated. No. Context. 2018, an organization was tracking the number of deaths worldwide related to car accidents. Worldwide. Every day, approximately 3,700 dead a day. Car accidents. We have any call to end driving? No.
Yeah.
The if you look at the rates on other diseases, they're as higher. Now, and then the last number I'll give you, okay, USA has been pretty much locked down. Sweden said, bite me. Sweden was open. According to the records, 4,874 people have died in Sweden. According to the records, 117,096 have died in the USA. Sweden, on a percent of population, is 0.013% higher than the US. I don't think that's a significant percentage. Given the economic toll that has been paid, given the economic toll that will be paid in the very near future, because all these businesses that have been shut down, some are opening up, but they're at partial capacity. I know of a restaurant in downtown or the beach area of San Diego. Normally they could handle 800 people, max capacity. Because of what they have to do, they're only going to be handling 300. Less than half. How do you stay in business for long? You don't.
Right.
So those are the numbers as of about an hour ago. I don't find it any more serious than the regular or the everyday flus that we've had year after year. It's not this vicious contagion that it was played up to be. And if it was, then why did flip-flop Fauci originally say you need to wear, what do you say? You need to wear, no, you don't need to wear a mask. Then you need to wear them. Now, you don't really need to wear them, but it's a nice thing to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, flip-flop Fauci.
And one thing I've noticed is that outside of what I talk about a lot this past week, just the political warfare that we're experiencing, and how there's agendas behind the push to bring the narrative of the concerns for a second wave. So everyone's been playing on the fear of a second wave, along with the whole idea of wanting to disrupt any type of political momentum from the Trump campaign, while also trying to build up something for the Biden campaign to run with. Then you have, on top of all of the other stuff, and Steph, I'll get your thoughts on this situation as well, but you got the autonomous zone stuff going on. You have, what else? A couple other topics we'll get into, but Steph, lay out for us some of the things you were just showing a minute ago.
Give me a second, because I had a tab up and it's gone. So go ahead and continue and just let me find this, because it ties into what I'm going to let you guys
All right. So watch this. In the midst of what, Alan, when you were speaking, what I did, I brought up something that has not been getting much attention. And here is the total, as of 2020, the amount of suicides that has taken place. So the suicide rates by state in 2020. And so amongst the response to this pandemic is the reaction and the response that has locked in millions upon millions of people, on top of the unemployment, on top of financial issues people might be having. And I personally, within my, not my close circle, but relatively a good amount of people I know or friends of friends have committed suicide.
Oh my gosh.
In the last several months. And so, yeah, just last night, my wife informed me of a friend of hers from high school, committed suicide. So it's something that is not being talked about. So the mental and emotional toll that's been taken or impact on people's lives. And so here's just some stuff I pulled up as you're speaking. And we see by states here, the increase. And it's at the very bottom, we have Montana. We have states that are relatively, so we got Montana, Alaska, Wyoming, New Mexico, Idaho, Utah, South Dakota, all happen to be the western states that happen to have the most suicide rates to date. And that's not being talked about or covered in the mainstream media. So
think about that. Give those states again, the name of those states. Montana.
Right, so Montana, Alaska, Wyoming, New Mexico, Idaho, Utah, South Dakota. Suicides per 1,000 people. They're leading in that particular ratio.
Okay. Not only, to your point, excellent point, not only are they not talking about, these are the other effects suicide, DV, domestic violence, things happening in the home to children.
Yeah.
Just an increased level of, for lack of a better term, depression.
Yeah.
All of these are related to this specific event that to me has been forced on us. It's not being talked about because this is more context. Now we look at, okay, this is the number of people, God rest their soul, that have died. These are the people who are suffering, or these are the people who are dying suicide because they can't take the environment anymore, or they can't get the help they need because it's all locked down. There's another statistic that maybe eventually will come out. How many people were seriously harmed because their elective medical procedures were not done timely? I happen to have somebody in my circle of friends, and God protect him, he was diagnosed with bladder cancer. Now, this just doesn't sound good to me.
Mm-hmm.
Because his chemotherapy was not considered essential, it got delayed 3 or 4 weeks. And I'm thinking, when it's my bladder, it's essential.
Mm-hmm.
This is all more context to what is going on that is not being discussed, and puts the illness and the death rate from CV in context.
Right. So. Very true. Peter, Steph, you want to touch on something real quick, and then I want to definitely, we just going through a couple different subjects. I want to try to get through as many subjects as possible. So
go ahead.
Go ahead. I'll let you go ahead.
All right. So I'm going to kind of trash everything you just said.
All right. Go ahead.
Sorry. So, there's a lot of misinformation out there. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of information. There aren't a lot of facts because there are a lot of variables. So let's just cut to the chase. Let's look at death certificates. Mm-hmm. Now, don't go down the road of what's on a certificate versus what they died from. That's irrelevant to this. It doesn't matter. So let's look at deaths from all causes. Now, keep in mind, there's up to a 60-day delay on the data. So there's more data that will come in. Well, actually 6 weeks. It can be up to 60 days. So here we are from April of 2017 up until this spring. Mm-hmm. You'll notice that there was a little spike back there in January of 2018 during the last influenza that was pretty bad. It was a pretty bad flu year. So that orange line that you're seeing going, that's the average when you go back through all the years. Mm-hmm. When you go above that average line, you get into excessive deaths. So what that tells you is that there's something else that is going on that's creating all of those excessive deaths, which have nothing to do with the typical average. Now, I don't remember seeing anything about a new major war breaking out, for instance. I haven't seen airplanes falling out of the sky in the United States. Matter of fact, less people were driving because we were in lockdown. I mean, that whole argument is really a waste of time. Look at the chart, and what that chart tells you is that there were a huge amount of excessive deaths way beyond the mean that occurred this spring. It's all COVID related. And there's a delay in this series. Now, here's the other problem with the COVID deaths, because the whole month of March is pretty much missing. Not because they didn't put it in, but because of the delay time for several reasons. One is the pandemic. Things were kind of wacky with the hospitals and the reporting systems. Plus, there's a usual delay time with getting certificates through the sources to begin with and then getting put into a database. Mm-hmm. March is basically not in here, and March is when we really weren't sure what was going on, but we locked down. The governors decided to lock down. Mm-hmm. So the deaths are actually approximately anywhere between 20 and 30% higher than what is reported here on this chart. Now, next, to segue from that, there is a chart, and it keeps disappearing, drives me nuts. Where did it go? Excessive deaths. Come on.
Probably got to scroll, get to one pages and scroll up and down or something like that. It's only one of those pages, but
oh, there it is. Thank you.
Yeah.
It was my Twitter feed. So here's the other point. In a pandemic is different than an epidemic. What you could consider right now, we're in a pandemic, but we're having hotspots throughout the world, like little epidemics. That spike that you're seeing there on that chart is just another version of the excessive deaths, but it's focused on pneumonia, influenza, and COVID. So the spike still exists, even when you break it down into just those three categories. That is called a herald wave. And that is the same wave that you saw on the excessive death chart, which included deaths from all causes across the board. A herald wave, its typical characteristics is hotspots, little epidemics everywhere. And then in the fall, depending on what season the initial herald wave comes in, then the next season you get the second wave. So it's seeded throughout the world. As we were playing around with China on the West Coast and thinking that we were checking fevers from Chinese travelers coming on the East Coast, there were actually Italian nationals and American citizens traveling back and forth from Europe that were all infected from the Italian strain that was more virulent, which is why New York got hit so bad first. Now that Italian strain has mutated into 3 separate versions and it's spread through the United States. So there's 3 things going on in the South, the West, and the Southwest. It's a combination of some of the states opening. They opened at different times for different reasons, and not all of them follow the standards, the 3 phases, such as Arizona, for instance. And by the way, it's like 95 to 100 degrees down there right now. And they're into let's call it a second wave within the first wave. And their hospitals are being maxed out. Alabama's a mess. Texas is getting up there. North Carolina's a problem. Florida's a problem. California's a problem. We're up into the mid 20,000 cases across the board per day. At the peak in March and April, early May, we were as high as 32,000 cases a day. So with that lag time effect, you've got to have all those cases that resolve themselves, whether you're 80% or 85% that have a mild form, never went to the hospital, or you're part of that 15% that say was hospitalized, and less than 5% end up in ICUs, and then about half of those, 1 to 2% pass away. We haven't even seen the results of the total results from the opening of the states, Memorial Day, and the protests because of the lag time. So that is a herald wave. It's from excessive deaths. We haven't even seen the numbers. They're already beginning to spike just in the past couple of weeks because of lag time. And we're in the middle of the summer, and look what's going on with Brazil. That's all Italian strain. They're getting slammed down there, and their numbers aren't even accurate because they cut them off last week. And then the Supreme Court came in down there and said, hey, you need to report the numbers, but they're not doing a lot of testing. And lastly, the question always comes up, well, the cases are larger now because of testing. Actually, that's not true. Because when you look at the metrics, let's say a month ago when the testing was near the peak where we are now, we're around the same area, there were a certain percentage that were coming in positive. Well, depending on what state you're looking at, where we're getting these spikes in the South, the West, and the Southwest, it's anywhere between 10 and 15%. So it's not because of more testing, it's because there's more infections that are beginning to show up. And I'll just leave it at that.
All right, so watch this. So based upon the information shared, and you mentioned the middle of summer, actually, summer hasn't really even began really. So basically what I'm getting from all this is that there's still going to be millions or hundreds of thousands more cases, as well as people dying from it, but yet based upon the information now, it's been a very small percentage of the total infected. And so as a result of that, they've Steve Mnuchin mentioned that he does not anticipate, or will they look to shut down or lock down the economy again. So then what should we expect from that point on?
Well, here's the issue.
Mhm.
They don't decide what Mother Nature does.
Right.
That may be the ideal situation, but the situation may result in forcing the shutdown, whether you want to or not. Now, everyone thinks herd immunity doesn't work with the pandemic. So let me give you an example. You realize that the flu shot, they want you to take it every year, which I don't take. The flu resulted, comes around every year in a different form and a different mutation. That was due to pandemics of flus. Pandemics do not go away. There's a big difference between an epidemic and a pandemic. And by the way, who's the advisor? I can't think of his name. The economics guy that came on CNBC yesterday and said there will be no second wave. Wasn't Mnuchin.
I have no idea. I didn't pay attention.
It begins with a K. Cullo. He came on. Mind you, we're in the middle of June. We're at 117,000 cases, deaths. We're approaching 30,000 cases per day again, which is where we were in the peak when New York was being slammed. And Cullo was out there in the middle of June saying there's going to be no second wave. What he didn't understand was we're not second waves don't come in the summer. The first wave never ended. The second wave comes in the fall, and that's going to be a mutation off the Italian strain. Worse than what it is now, because it's already showing up in the gene sequence. And that's the news about the Italian strain that you're not getting in the mainstream media. But you know what they're calling it? Because they want to be politically correct. Like, they won't call the virus that originated out of China the Chinese virus, right? That's not politically correct.
Yeah.
So they call it the European. It came from Europe. They're not calling it the Italian strain because that would be racist. Give me a break. We have some facts.
So it's still underway like that. It's going to be a lot more infections, a lot more deaths along the way. So on the economy, let's talk about.
Can I throw in one more thing on this?
Yeah.
Thank you, Steph. We're not quite in agreement, but it's serious. It's out there. I do doubt sources of information on any of the sides because I don't know. I mean, if you listen to funeral home directors out of New York, they say the death certificates are inaccurate. But the thing that I saw recently out of Italy, two doctors, one is the head of one of the regional hospitals in Milan or the Tuscany area, really hard hit in the beginning. This came as of May 31. They've been doing what they call swabs, doing the CV test. And they said that the term used, the viral load on these swabs is basically clinically insignificant. It is so much less than what they were finding a month or two ago. The idea was that it's dying out.
I saw that too, but that's false information. But go ahead.
Well, I didn't call him up to find. The other thing is
there's a reason why that happened, that they didn't add color to it, and number two, they're not a virologist reading the gene sequence. But go ahead.
Again, when you get into the testing of it and how the tests were created, I've read or watched people talk about how they have, and these are people who are in virology and biology, and they think the testing is very inaccurate. Long story short, there's a disease out there. Some people die from it. Some die with it. Some die from it. If the cure is worse than the disease, then we got a really big problem. Are there things that everybody can do to minimize this? Yeah. And most people are doing it. But then and the idea of wearing a mask. I read or listen to people who again are in the business, and they talk about how bad it is to wear a mask all day long. Thing is, it would really be nice to get a big panel of quote unquote experts, put them on the stage, and keep them there until all the questions are answered. Because Steph's pulling information that's new to me. I see information that's different. bottom line is, yeah, I think, what is it? Coming up in either this Sunday or next Sunday is actually the official day that summer begins. But, we're supposed to get hot. As far as hospitals being overrun, I know from talking to one of my neighbors who's an ER, his hospital in San Diego is pretty, it's pretty light. They're furloughing people. There might be places in the US or in the world that are really, quote unquote, heating up and being overrun. Doesn't seem to be in San Diego. We're going to see, but it's how this information has been used to change behavior. That's what I worry about. And this idea that, last thing, that the federal government is going to come to the rescue with stimulus money, not telling anybody, oh, by the way, we just acquired another $2+ trillion worth of debt. Hope you don't mind. Somehow, some way, this debt's going to have to get paid off, or if they default, the outfall is going to be horrendous.
So watch this, Alan. You mentioned about having a panel. If we could get a panel of experts to discuss this, here's the thing with that: even if you get a panel of experts, they're all not going to come to the same conclusion. They're not going to all agree. Some have agendas. Some are backed by the same entities that want to see this. So they're going to have a very friendly, user-friendly report saying that don't worry about it, don't wear masks. So you won't have a complete consensus you can still trust because of all the agendas just being thrown out there. So we see what's happening. So here's the thing: regardless of all the data that's shown, people will get sick for there's something out there that's causing issues, and there will be still a relatively larger amount of lives lost. Okay, that's what it is. Now, question is, how do you respond? Do you shut yourself in? Do you live in that world where you don't want to engage, or you want to whatever? Me personally, I went to dinner last night, out and about in a restaurant, no mask. It was. I'm not going to live. I'm not going to just. That's not me anyway. So what we're witnessing is the response from, as you mentioned, from the Federal Reserve. Now, this current week, do you guys think that the market correction was a result of the mainstream news of the surge of cases, or did there something else happen behind the scene?
It was a combination of both, and I'm going to touch on 2 points. Number one, masks. No one said that you had to wear them 24/7 a day. That's ridiculous. The point of a mask is risk management. So if you're from banking, you understand what risk management is. It's mitigating your risk. So you wear one when you're in a high risk environment. It protects you. It protects other people. Anything in front of you that's blocking you is lowering your risk. Period. End of story.
Now watch this. Does it matter what type of mask?
The point is, as long as you're doing something rather than nothing, you were lowering the risk to yourself and other people. Number two, I forgot what the other point was. It was something that you had touched on before Mike came on and replied.
Well, let me say again. See, this is the good panel we're talking about. We're coming at it from different points of view, which leaves. And I was going to say this about what you said, Michael, is that you bring a bunch of people together, hopefully experts deep in knowledge, and they don't agree. At least the listener now has more information, more questions to think about. That's wonderful.
I think it'll confuse more people, though. It'll confuse more people because if you got a 10 panel of experts, all PhD, and if some are from the Ivy League, they're going to have a different agenda. You got some from whatever, so you're going to have 3 that says it's good, 3 says it's bad, 3 says run for the hills. Right. People are going to walk away even more confused and scared, not knowing what the hell is going on. So,
well, I'm going to have a good time. So I love it. The other thing about risk management, and I mean, that is life. You're managing risk in all kinds of ways. The whole reason that a physician, a surgeon would wear a mask is so that person, he or she, does not contaminate the field they're working on. And not necessarily, if somebody's home and they're wearing a mask, okay, that might be a little crazy. But I've seen people outside driving their cars windows up with masks on. the problem that I've read about with masks is that you're lowering the amount of oxygen you're getting. You are re-inhaling your CO2 to a degree. And if you were actually expelling a virus, you're now going to re-inhale it. So it's not all positive. There are negatives to wearing these things. And then again, you know, if you wind up touching the mask with your dirty hand, well, you're going to suck in whatever it is. And the other thing is the material that these masks are made of, based on what you're trying to keep out, the virus, which is measured in nanometers. 1 nanometer is 1/1000th of a micron, and a micron is 1/1000th of a millimeter. So we're talking really, really tiny. In a way, it's like putting up a chain link fence to keep out a herd of ants. It's not happening.
That's true. Like, there's a lot of we could go down a lot with masks, but
you know,
the point being is, if you're doing something rather than nothing, and it's your choice, it's a personal choice. But before I forget, because I'm getting old, sometimes thoughts eat me. I'm sorry, guys. What I was trying to get to before was, what you're forgetting is what I said initially. This is a herald wave. So when you refer to some hospital in some locality that's not showing, any issues, that is exactly the characteristics in the past from pandemics that we have history to look at, that was written and recorded, like the 1918 pandemic. They're very spotty. It's global. It's a pandemic because it's global, but the locality is epidemic. So there may be something going on in Southern California in a particular area, but there's nothing going on in another county in Northern California. That is how a herald wave works. But a second wave, if it manifests, when they do, and none of our generation has experienced this, none of us really know anything about it on a first-hand basis. All I have is my personal stories from my family that experienced it. It's going to be everywhere all the time for a couple of months. It's not going to be spotty with hot spots. That's the difference. So it's kind of misleading. There's no comparison between what's going on right now, because the virus is just beginning to adapt to its human hosts. It needs to adapt to that, mutate, and then you get the fall wave, classic, where the weather is more adaptable. It turns into a mess. So, hey, you can do what you want. It's your choice, it's your body, it's your life.
Right. So it's not going anywhere. It's something we're going to face forever. And so also, Alan, your pen, people saying,
oh, sorry.
It is loud. So I
didn't think the mic was that sensitive, but thank you.
So we've laid out the fact that whatever is here is not going anywhere. We're going to be confronted with it for a long time to come. Now let's get to the numbers and the math and the destruction of the current monetary system and how things are playing out. So, Steph, you mentioned that there's more this past week, as far as just the announcement of a second wave or whatever that led to the markets dipping. What are you aware of, or what do you think it is?
That was part of it, but I think it had more to do with what the Fed said. Mm-hmm. It's kind of like buy the rumor, sell the news.
Yeah.
Because if the Fed comes out and he literally said, I don't know word for word, but in a nutshell, he said, we're not even thinking about raising rates for at least sometime down the road in 2022. So in one side of that equation, you say, oh my God, they got our back, talk about moral hazard to the max. I don't have to worry about anything. The Fed's got my back. But on the other hand, you're like, wow, it must really be bad. What do they know that we don't? Well, you know what he knows? He knows that the potential is very high, that the fall is going to be worse than the spring. Mm-hmm. And he's just setting up, he's putting it out there. He's letting everyone know in a very subtle way without making any predictions, which is very smart. So I think that had something to do with it. And there's other things going on around the world too. Mm-hmm. So it was a combination of events. And don't forget, everybody, 95% of this market is algorithms and automated trading, reading headlines for keywords. It's not day traders sitting around pressing buttons, despite what you may hear about Robinhood.
No.
Well, I got a question, Steph. I got a question for what you just said. and
Yep.
I'm not disagreeing with you. Okay, so you have this system that has algorithms, computerized programs that's
Yep.
checking news headlines, whatever. One, who are operating these algorithms, if you know, just in general terms, and two, who's actually doing the buying and the selling?
I do. I can answer that question very easily. There's a difference between an algorithm that, let's say you run a hedge fund, and you have an algorithm that's designed to execute trades in a specific way for a specific situation. So, for instance, buy the rumor, sell the news, the Fed announcement. You know that the trading is going to be very different right before the Fed announcement, and it's going to be very different right after the Fed announcement. But remember, you're not the only person in this pod. So let's say I'm going to give you some rough numbers, not exact percentages, but rough. Remember, 95% of the market is automated trading. When I say automated trading, it means computers are executing these trades, not people. Now, roughly about anywhere between 50 to 75% of that automated trading, actually it's less. See, this is what's bad when you get into numbers. But there's let's say half of that 95%, roughly, could be, but not necessarily, are managers who are hitting the button to execute the algorithm. But the algorithm runs on its own. It's not run by somebody. It's pre-programmed to run a specific program. That is still automated. It's just that it's being set to launch at a specific time. But the other side of the equation is the other half of the trades that are automated, the information is being stored in machine learning artificial intelligence, which is making the decisions and executing these trades. So what we saw 10 years ago in the market, what I'm seeing on the charts is a complete 360-degree change versus when I first saw the algorithms beginning to infiltrate and dominate the indexes, because you would first see them, you would see these 100 lot trades running up and down the bid-ask screen. 100 lots were always algorithms because they trade in even numbers. And you can see the odd numbers were like individual traders or some hedge fund just throwing something out there, depending on what the stock was. Now you look at those runs, now the charts look different. It's like you don't have a clean chart to trade. The charts look like goobly gob. It's garbage. You can't even read the candlesticks on some of the 1 minute charts. You have no idea what's going on because it's computers mindlessly executing trades. It's a mess. So you got to go after the high liquidity trades, like the S&P ETF has a lot of liquidity in it. You can still read the candlesticks. But if you go to, let's say, a utility stock like Comcast, throw one out there. Look at that 1 minute chart. It's like, are you kidding me? But it's got a lot of volume. So there's a lot of nuances here when you're talking about algorithmic trading and automated trading.
So the fact that it's being run by computers, and whether somebody overrides what the computer is going to do, or the computer is in essence has its own authorization to execute buys and sells when the computer or when the program says. The other question is, and you kind of answered it, who owns these machines? So apparently hedge funds and all the big trading companies.
And there's some small places that aren't considered big institutionals or hedge funds that have proprietary algorithmic programs. But the important
what I'm getting at, and tell me if this is correct or not, you have these big, for lack of a better term, trading houses that have these computers, this software, these algorithms, and they're just out. These machines are just out there doing it. Then there's a very small portion of the market where someone is actually telling their broker buy or sell.
Right, and that's when someone says, this is not your father's market. Well, it's definitely not your grandfather's market, and it is no longer your father's market, and it's no longer the market it was 10 years ago, depending on what your age was. Even if you were an active trader, it's obvious to you when you look at it.
Okay.
Well, okay.
the way that it's happening, you're still thinking in terms, and I see this written in articles all the time. It says traders are doing this and traders are doing that. And I sit back and I chuckle because they're so behind the curve. They're not saying the computers did this and the computers did that. And the one thing that's missing out of this little dialogue is high frequency trading, which is different than algorithms. And so when you combine the algorithms with the artificial intelligence and the machine learning into high frequency trading, the trading is happening so fast. Back in the day, let's say back in the year 2000, the amount of trades that it would take all day for one stock, depending on its volume, to trade all day, now happens in less than a second on that same stock. Because these algorithms are not trading in the way that you think of what trading is. It doesn't work like that anymore. It's not going in necessarily to buy a stock and hold it and sell it at 2 o'clock, or buy this stock and swing it because I like the fundamentals and I'll sell it 3 months from now. No, most of these trades are scalping pennies. And when you start adding up the millions and millions of trades that are being executed in a fraction of a second, you start adding up those pennies. That's why the brokerage houses for years were reporting profit every year. They never had a loss.
So what I'm hearing.
Go ahead, answer that. Then I want to move on to another topic as well.
So, what I'm hearing is very interesting. Is that there is a trading volume happening every day the market's open that people could never do.
Yeah, right.
And it's all driven, let's just say, by machines, and they aren't looking for tens or ones or 20s. They're looking for pennies, and it becomes scary to think about that there is more volume in a second with the machines than people would do in an entire day.
Right.
So to me, it's almost like it's really bringing home that, to at least some extent, this is just gambling.
Always was to some degree, but it depends on your goal.
Yeah. Okay.
It depends on which side you're on as well. Which side is you on? If you're the one controlling it, you're doing well. But if you're the ones that are caught up in, putting your funds into the hands of others, then you're going to lose the side more than likely.
That's why apparently never goes away. It'll always be the same no matter what the computers do. If you know how to read a chart, what the computers are doing doesn't matter, because the technicals are going to be the same no matter what's going on behind the scenes, because the price is the price. It doesn't care about anything else. It's just the price.
All right, so I want to transition a little bit because I'm not sure if you guys had a chance to, amongst all the stuff going on, the Finance and Hearing Committee had a talk about the CBDC. And so Metho Nelson just brought up a good point here. It says, word has it that the Fed is fixing to drop its CBDC by the end of July. And so I watched that whole hour and a half, give or take, back and forth amongst the, you have some college professors / bankers, whoever. They're all basically saying that something needs to be done now in preparation for the need to roll out the next stimulus payment, because they're trying to say the unbanked and those that they're concerned with the unbanked and the 35 million who've yet to receive their first stimulus, and the need to provide faster ways to get stuff done out into public's hands. So what do you guys think about that? Like they're talking about utilizing the postal service as well as possibility of a Fed accounts, and then somebody threw out the digital treasury dollar done directly through the Treasury Direct accounts that everybody has, whether it's set up or not. What do you think will win out, the Fed accounts or the Treasury?
Go ahead, Alan, kill it.
No, you go first.
I'll go back to stuff that happened years ago, and this is just another manifestation of it.
Yeah.
And the bottom line is, I'm sticking to what I've said for the past few weeks, and it's no different than my view on this pandemic, because you look at the track record, it's spot on. It may take a week, may 2 weeks to manifest, but the debt is so high right now, it's irrelevant. Really, it really doesn't matter.
But irrelevant. I'm talking about they're trying to transition.
Unfixable or manageable. It's like, okay, let's just do what we need to do to keep things stable. It's not even stimulus. We just keep fill in the holes, for God's sake. And let's blow it out until we can't blow it out anymore. And, you know,
watch this, but they need to have something in place. They need to have something in place for when they end when they just flat out get rid of the debt, inflate the debt, or whatever the final process is of the debt that no longer matters. They still need to rebuild with something. And then that's what I think all this is geared towards, is having something along the way that can keep people plugged into the system that they want to create again. In a digital form, of course. Solely digital, of course.
Yeah, well, the dollar is the oldest digital dollar that's been around in history. It was way before Bitcoin.
Correct, but they're trying to rebrand it, though. They're trying to rebrand it to make it seem like it's something new that will be on your phone.
Yeah.
Or through your phone.
Yeah, so you can really be tracked. You can't even do exchange one-on-one with somebody with a dollar bill. No, you got to be tracked. Every penny, tax for every penny you spend. That's what they want. And
so, Alistair McLeod, I'm not sure if you guys follow him or familiar. He's basically, based upon stuff he laid out, he was saying that by the end of this year, he sees a situation where fiat currency, including the dollar, will no longer be something that people will want, or entering in 2021 because of the whole World Health, the World Economic Forum and stuff like that. How they want to have all this digital stuff ready because paper will not be allowed into the 2021 timeframe.
My turn.
Go ahead.
Oh, not that I think that anybody anywhere in the world has bad intent and would actually do anything to harm anyone, right? The first I'm going to deal with is debt doesn't matter. Well, debt doesn't matter maybe if you're the borrower. If you're the lender, oh baby, debt matters and you want to be paid back. Whether you're a big institutional lender or you gave your friend that weekend a 20, you want it back, okay? You're not a charity. Now, to Steph's point, this debt now at plus 25 trillion is so, it's not massive, it's astronomical.
What's it, like 130% of GDP now in a matter of 3 months? It's crazy.
Yeah. So the idea that under the current monetary system that we have in this country, that this debt can be paid off, if it wasn't so serious, it would be laughable. No, under the current system, there's no way it can ever be paid off, which means ultimately default is coming. Now, if your pension is dependent on your pension company being able to cash in some treasuries every once in a while for you to get a little something, debt means a whole lot to you. If your Social Security, where all your extra is tied up in AAA rated US Treasury bills, bonds, and notes, and you're going to have to start cashing those in for the next years to it was 2034, 2035. I'm sure it's a lot shorter now, before you run out of any extra funds, which means benefits are going to have to get cut. That's serious. It's deadly serious. And if anybody thinks this is happening by accident, I would have to disagree. This is all on purpose. You create unpayable, unserviceable debt, the economies blow, and now we're going to have massive centralized control. To that point, there are countries, Sweden and Denmark in particular, they are pushing like crazy to go full digital. You can go, and I've seen pictures, and I believe the translation, the little signs in a window that says no cash today in Sweden. Okay, here's the problem I have with it. There's a SEAL team saying, 2 is 1, 1 is none. Meaning when you only have one choice, you have no options. If all money is electronic, digital, oh, this is wonderful. This is fantastic. Oh my goodness, we are so techie. We don't need this dirty, filthy money. Great. For you to access your monetary wealth, it's sitting somewhere in a bank's computer. You need a computer, you need internet access, you need computer access, and you need electricity. Any one of those items goes away, you're hosed. By the way, Michael, you bank at the Bank of Allen, and the Bank of Allen doesn't like you anymore. Oops, I'm sorry, your account has disappeared.
Yeah, I wouldn't keep a lot in your hands in the first place, so I wouldn't be worried about really losing what you got holding.
Yeah,
on.
but what you don't know is behind the scenes. I took over the bank of Steph. I just didn't tell you. So your account's in my hands. This whole idea that to have physical money is essential because it is option 2. What Steph was saying, if all money is electronic and the only way you can access your money is, especially in a transaction, is with a cell phone. Oh, first of all, you're going to have your cell phone on you constantly, which means you're going to continually expose yourself to EMF. And, we can have another conversation on the danger of that. Is somebody somehow, some way going to be able to track you? Absolutely. Is that part of a goal? I see it is. So the other thing is you cannot store, you cannot warehouse, you cannot put some of your monetary wealth, under your mattress for a rainy day. It's all electronics and it's all controlled by someone else. Anything goes wrong. Even if there was no bad intent and we had another Carrington event. Have we talked about the Carrington event?
I don't think so.
Okay, Carrington event took place in 1858, 59, something like that. A big, huge, massive energy pulse, for lack of a better term, came off the sun, hit the earth. Now, most people never noticed anything other than the fact that the aurora borealis dropped down to the tropics. That's the physical effect. Nobody felt anything. The only reason they know it happened is that all the telegraph equipment fried. Just fried. Caught on fire, non-operational. We get hit with anything like a Carrington event, considering how electronic, computerized, digitalized this world is, it's all gone in a heartbeat. And there's no coming back from this. There's no, I just got to download some new software. No, it's all gone.
Nobody wants to hear that because they're all in denial.
And to think that this is not going to happen. Well, it's been a few years ago, but every once in a while, the sun likes to really kick it big. And it did. And it sent one of these blasts across the Earth's orbit. It just missed the Earth by 9 days. So if you think this isn't an if, this is a when. And we have not, at least, I'm sure there's some people out there who have hardened their electronics to a degree, but if the grid goes down, there's no electricity, so it doesn't matter. We need physical money for many reasons. The biggest one for me is I don't like anybody having full control of me.
Well, watch this. The good news is everything you described, it's already in play now. And we do have physical money, and it's called metal.
Yay.
And so having metal gives you some form of hope to protect, preserve, and prepare for the digital age. Now we'll figure out all the details when we get further up into it, but it's already underway. And that's one of the things where the younger generation prefer digital because that's all they know. So, everything's been set up for their future, not necessarily ours, because we don't have much. Our generation's not going to do much about it, unfortunately, Alan. Like we can talk about what we want, but we're not going to get out there and cause no real disruption in the system. So but we got to just looks like we got to live with it. Looks like, huh?
No, I'll take the other. I'll take the absolute other side to this.
What you gonna do? Give it to me.
I'm telling you. First of all, I'm still alive. I'm still breathing. I still love my country. And my country has got a lot of warts and blemishes on it. But I don't blame the country. I blame the people who did it. Yeah. We still stand for liberty, freedom, and rights. It is a blessing from the founders and our ancestors, and it's the duty to protect it. My position, because what I study, the monetary system. And when I talk monetary system, I'm really not talking the Fed per se that much. I'm definitely not talking Wall Street. I'm talking about how money is created and extinguished in this system. Who does it? How it's done? Who gets the benefit? Who doesn't? All of this that we've been talking about is very important, but it is a huge distraction. And I'm not trying because Yoda told me, don't try, do or don't do. There's no trying. I'm doing what I can every day to get the information out of how we must change our monetary system. So the power, the control, and the benefit is returned to the people and our country and not bankers. If we let this go down just because I'm a lot older than you, but if we let this go down because of age, this is on us. This is not on the generation we're raising up now. It's on us. And anybody listening, get a hold of Michael. He can get a hold of me. I am trying to get basic monetary system education out. Not only is it simple, but the fix is really simple. And, Steph has read my material and likes it. And I appreciate that. Big compliment coming from Steph. No, to say, okay, this is inevitable is quitting. And I know you, Michael, well enough to know you are not a quitter.
Oh, definitely. But here's the thing.
Okay.
We got people who know, people who care. We're outnumbered by the majority who could care less, because majority of the people in the streets right now, they're distracted and they're concerned with, the injustices from a racial standpoint. So they could care less about the fact that they're being siphoned out. They got holes in their pockets that's being drained as we speak, but they don't care just yet. And so it's not wasted effort, but yet I just look at it just one person a day, which I'm assuming you do as well. If you can just wake up one person, that's the type of impact that I am expecting to have, not to reach 7-point-something billion people, but because I believe this is all part of a much greater plan anyway. So I'm not hanging my head or trying to, thwart the powers that be, just because I think the ultimate agenda has a lot to do with where this is heading anyway. So
I think we're closing up shop, right? 3:30.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say just two real things. I got to get out of here too.
Good deal. All right, so let's wrap this up with the last thoughts. Anybody? Let's, because this week coming up is going to be another interesting week. So I think we did a good job of scanning through some things this from this past week. Any last thoughts you guys want to leave us with before we dial back?
Steph, you go first.
Okay. Like you were saying about digital money and Carrington events, and that's counterparty risk, right? Tons of counterparty risk with crypto, no matter how you slice it or dice it.
Mm-hmm.
So you want to mitigate your risk. So it's a matter of risk. It just all circles back to risk management. So you need to have a backup plan. So when it comes to something like a pandemic, okay, you can believe what you want. You can take the facts that are out there, the combination thereof, and come to your own decision. But it's better to be prudent and prepare for the worst, because you don't know. And if you're at that spot where, oh crap, there's no toilet paper at the grocery store. There's no, well, you know what? You should have went out 2-3 months ago when there was like this lull in the summer and taking care of business, so you wouldn't be complaining or calling your relatives trying to borrow money or whatever, And lastly, I've seen some comments in the live comments. Thank you everyone for commenting in there. Someone said something about, I don't believe in manipulation in the metals or the markets. If you follow my work more closely, you would know that that's not true. And on multiple interviews and several articles I've written, that's actually not the case. There is manipulation. It just doesn't fit the narrative that was predominant 20 years ago and is still being carried along today. It happens, but it's different today. Go ahead, Alan.
This has been another wonderful time with you two. Really enjoy it. I think that the thing that is going to stick with me out of this today is your term, and I'm going to be using it a lot, risk management. It doesn't matter whether you're, looking at the world, you're trying to cross the street, you're trying to cook something on the stove. It's risk management. And we need to maybe to that point, we need as much information as we can on the risk so we can learn how to manage our risk. I think it's a huge thought to, and I'm glad you shared that term. I do agree with risk management. Part of it is, as far as the virus, washing your hands and learning how to properly wash your hands, not just scrubby for 20 seconds, but do it wrong. I happen to learn that from a dentist friend of mine. So I wash my hands the same way every time. The other is for anybody who's interested, who wants to get more information, if I may plug, you can find me at my website, FedEd, FEDED.us. We consider ourselves the gold standard of monetary system education, pun intended. And to the idea of metals, I absolutely believe metals are incredibly important. And if you want to protect your gold and silver, you're going to want lead and steel.
As always. Well, hey man, I'm gonna definitely put because Trader Steph, you're tradersteph.com now, right?
Tradersteph.com, folks, and
Trader Steph on
Twitter. Yeah.
I'll make sure I put it beneath the video description here because somebody requested that. So as always, it's good just to go back and forth, hear your thoughts and ideas, suggestions, and agree to disagree and agree again. So it's I enjoy it. But everybody enjoy the rest of your weekend, and we'll be back at it next weekend and hopefully have more of the crew with us. But yet, as always, just meant to give you guys a chance to hear thoughts going back and forth and hopefully leave a little bit wiser than we came in. So other than that, be blessed, everybody. See you guys later.
Take care.
Be safe out there.